This past January, I watched a webinar put on by the UU Justice Organization, Side with Love, about the topic of reproductive justice. One particular quote from that webinar stayed with me. It kept bouncing around inside me all throughout the month of January. Here's the quote. It's from Reverend Sarah Dendy Green, who is the Youth and Young Adults Program Manager for the Unitarian Universalist Association. She said this, "She, Wendy Moore O'Neill, taught me this song. The lyrics are, I've got a right to the tree of life." And what I think our movement does really well, our faith community does really well, is we have these little pockets of people who really believe that. I'm thinking of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. I'm thinking of our movement of young people who really believe they have a right to the tree of life. And when I say life, I'm not talking about the dying trees. I'm picturing robust magnolias that smell delicious, that are plush, that are decadent, that are full of abundant joy and elaborate care. End quote. Why did this quote keep sticking with me? Keep sitting with me, holding space with me? In one way, it feels so ordinary, almost banal or cliche, to say that we, each of us, has a right to the tree of life. That we deserve lives full of abundant joy and elaborate care. And where that statement creates sparks inside me, the flint it bounces off of to create fires is, funnily enough, the idea that people really believe that. That they believe it in a way that isn't banal, that isn't cliche. That they believe it in a way that creates a little bit of paradise here on this earth. I find it hard to put to words what wells up inside me hearing that, hearing a right to the tree of life. Something within me turns toward Reverend Sarah Dendy Green's words and finds an echo to a deep longing I have inside for a social fabric, for ways of being and living that truly invite me, those I love, those I will never know, to lives that can accurately be described as robust magnolias that smell delicious, that are plush, that are decadent, that are full of abundant joy and elaborate care. And here is the next piece I have for you. It is the poem "To the People Who Have Mistaken Freedom for Liberation" by Reverend Teresa Soto. They write, "To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. You must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine, eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. But to actually be free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, but a promise. With thanks to Reverend Leela Sinha. I give you this poem, this piece, as perhaps a warning. You are not a kudzu vine, eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. I do not wish kudzu vineness upon you. I fear for you, I fear for myself sometimes. Waking up to find that all the hillsides nearby me are barren. That the green and growing things that once surrounded us, the well springs of life and joy and sacred water, have been devoured by my, by our, by your need for control, or fear of what could be, or desire to feel like the most worthy. I want for you, for myself, instead to find that inside us are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. I want us to feel within us deep within us the promise that we must know and must fight for the entire universes inside everyone else. I want you, us, to taste the holy flavor, feel the holy sensation of connection. Because that is the prize that waits for us in this work. The gift of this promise, the gift of fighting for the universes inside others and ourselves. It is that it opens us to the grace of connection, to touching, to experiencing what it means to connect to this earth beneath our feet, to connect to the most dark and hollowed spaces inside ourselves, to find love in the words, the glance, the care of another. All right, now, one more piece. This is a quote from that same Side with Love webinar where I heard the words of Reverend Sarah Dendy Green. The person who said this quote is Gerald Hayes, the movement building director for If, When, How, Lawyering for Reproductive Justice, who started the webinar with a presentation about what reproductive justice is. She talked about how racial justice is vital to reproductive justice, saying, "The reproductive justice framework was developed and continues to be led by women of color who noted that their specific experiences were not being fully represented or prioritized in either the civil rights movement or the women's rights movement." The term was specifically coined in 1994 by a group of 12 Black women in Chicago who believed that the traditional choice framework failed to take into account the economic, social, demographic, and geographic circumstances that prohibited their communities from having any real, meaningful choice about their reproductive health and destinies. She also listed the major tenets of reproductive justice as 1, the right to have children. 2, the right to not have children. 3, the right to parent the children you have in a safe, and healthy environment. And 4, the right to bodily autonomy. Were some of you wondering when I would get to reproductive justice specifically? Gerald Hayes' presentation really expanded my understanding of reproductive justice, what it encompasses and what it means. I want to specifically lift up her words again about how this group of 12 Black women in Chicago in 1994 believed that the traditional choice framework failed to take into account the economic, social, demographic, and geographic circumstances that prohibited their communities from having any real, meaningful choice about their reproductive health and destinies. Perhaps you have never doubted your ability or your right to have children, to not have children, to parent the children you have in a safe and healthy environment, or to bodily autonomy. And many of us, perhaps most of us, have been denied the ability or doubted our right to these fundamental things. So I want to tell you that you do have a right to these, that we have a right to these, that those rights aren't ultimately derived, they don't really come from the government. Not when we get down to it, to the wire, to the base, to the truth. Instead, here at the wire, at the base, the truth, you have a right to the tree of life. You have a right to the tree of life. You have a right to the tree of life. And we have a right to the tree of life. And because of this, we all have a right to have children. We all have a right to not have children. We all have a right to parent the children we have in a safe and healthy environment. We all have a right to bodily autonomy, to decide what we want for our own bodies. May we all remember and respect our right to the tree of life. May we all remember and respect other people's, other beings' right to the tree of life. This is perhaps a promise. This is perhaps a covenant.